Session 34 of the Law of One, Part 1. We're going to get into karma and some more information about catalyst. Let's begin. In the last session, we talked a lot about catalyst and programming, and some of the questions that we have here are directly related to the questions that Don had, and you'll see when we get there, it's going to make sense which questions they were, and Don is just going to go a little bit deeper into those. And then karma has a lot of information for us who have some concepts about what karma is in Oriental philosophy, and how to apply the practical aspect of it. I would say it's pretty good in this session, so we're gonna get into all of that. The first question that was asked in this session was, I didn't include it as usual in the slideshows because it's not really related, but it had to do with Carla, and now that she was beginning to exercise, Don wanted to know, or Carla wanted to know also, if she could do if it would be more beneficial to do 2 exercises before the session or something to that effect. And Ra suggested that she would do 1 long session of an hour, I believe it was, and then 1 shorter session, so another half hour in the evening. And that was it. That was just the first question. There's another question that I'm going to obviate, I think is the 34.3, where Don also asks something personal about his own experience, and Ra actually says that they don't want to answer that too much, but only comment that he should figure it out for himself, because that would be infringing upon his free will. So those 2 questions that I didn't include here, they are part of book 5 if you have the original books, and they are part of this session if you have the Raw contact books, or if you have the website of Law of One info, which again you can see in the description here below, and you are not reading the original but the re-listen version or the raw contact, then you would see those questions there. They're part of book 5, again, the personal material that they excluded from the original books. So I didn't include it here. Sometimes I do because they have some relevance, like sometimes they would talk about synchronicities, or they would talk about wanderers, or something else, so I include them. But these 2, I just didn't think it was necessary. So we're gonna jump into session 34, of course, question 2 right away, when Don is asking, first question that I have for this video. And after Ra answering the question about Carla doing her exercises, Don says, "Thank you very much. We'll start general questioning now. You stated at an earlier time that penetration of the 8th level, or intelligent infinity level, allows a mind-body-spirit complex to be harvested if it wishes at any time space during the cycle. When this penetration of the 8th level occurs, what does the entity who penetrates this level experience? Can you tell me this?" It's a really good question. Ra says, "The experience of each entity is unique in perception of intelligent infinity. Perceptions range from a limitless joy to a strong dedication to service to others while in the incarnated state. The entity which reaches intelligent infinity most often will perceive this experience as one of unspeakable profundity. However, it is not usual for the entity to immediately desire the cessation of the incarnation. Rather, the desire to communicate or use this experience to aid others is extremely strong." So the question that Don asked was, when somebody penetrates the 8th level of consciousness, and they become harvestable, say because of their activation of their energy centers, then what's the experience? What does the person experience? It's a really good question, because it's a state that this is what I would call it's the state of awakening, satori, bodhi, whichever way you want to call it, in different cultures and philosophies. But it is that state which, the mystical experience that is hard to describe. And we can see the parallels already from what Ra is saying, that when you reach this level, you have a profound desire to communicate to others, what happened to you. And it's extreme joy as well. So that's the question that Don was asking, like, what does this person experience once they do that? Now, I want to make a clarification before I go into interpreting some of this stuff, because I think it's crucial, especially now. It's crucial, especially because of the spiritual ego that comes out of this, and our misconceptions of what awakening really is, in the sense of a sustained awakening. Don is asking in terms of, say, he said, you stated at an earlier time, this is something that they talked about before, I forgot which session they said this, but it was previously, of course, that penetration of the 8th level, or intelligent infinity, allows a mind-body spirit complex to be harvested. This is, to me, this is interpretation, for myself, of the natural state of the being that accomplishes this penetration of the 8th level by conscious work, by being that person, by embodying the experience that it's having and everything that is assimilating in terms of not understanding or knowledge, but in wisdom, in total wisdom of who the person is. So awakening in the sense of the Oriental philosophies, not the experience of, not the mystical experience. I will use the word mystical experience, or even satori, which is attained by certain practices and understandings of reality. So I will use those to refer or make sort of like a simile, if you will. So it kind of creates context, okay? But this is not what Ra is saying, not to me, not to my interpretation. So again, if it resonates with you, great. If not, then reject it. Because they're saying the experience of each entity is unique in perception of intelligent infinity. It's true. Perceptions range from a limitless joy to a strong dedication to service to others while in the incarnated state. So the simile that I want to make is when people either have a mystical experience, and this can happen to people while they are in meditation or in prayer. They are at their temples, and I've heard stories, like first-hand stories of people telling me how these experiences were, and they just can't explain it. They just say that it was like they felt like everything was love, and everything was beautiful, and they just had a mystical experience. And as a result, they become just this humble people that are amazed by what they felt, because even though they can't describe it, they cannot help but act the way they are now. And some of them, they just pursue this as a lifestyle of, they just realize internally that this is all there is. This is an awakening for them. So I'm not saying that these people are harvested because they had, or harvestable because they had the experience. I don't know if this is penetration of the 8th level, as Don was asking, in terms of what I believe is conscious work that you simply embody. But it is related to that. I mean, I can see the parallels here. Also, and this is where I have all the caveats, the psychedelic experience does promote this. But to me, and this is, again, the disclaimer, that is not equal to be enlightened. That is not equal at all to be harvestable because you had an experience. If anything, it will be a window opening to you, to the people that have done these experiences. If any of you have done it, you know that there is a window opening that is telling you, this is reality. This is how it is. This is who you are. And so, it is the will and the task of the experiencer, in this case, to embody that. to follow that path and to really, like I said, incarnate that beingness. So, and it's the same experience, and this is why I want to relate it. The experience is one of abundant joy. You feel super, not happy, but it's just a harmony and peace, and just everything is perfect, a perfection. And there is a huge desire to communicate this to others and to serve other people in this way. And this is why, it's common, and I felt it myself, when you have these psychedelic experiences, you almost want to tell everybody, like they should be doing this. They should really, you want to shake them up to say the reality that you're living is not the true one. You must see for yourself, I mean, it's funny how once you get into this path, you find these people, and I guess you recognize them more. But I remember meeting somebody who had a mystical experience, and he was a drinker, a guy that goes to bars, and this classical, male-oriented fellow. And after this mystical experience, he claims that he saw Jesus, and I mean, he was Christian, of course. And mystical experiences are always, or psychedelic experiences are related to what your belief system is, what you associate those divine things with. So this person had a mystical experience with Jesus, and he became devoted to this, and he could not stop talking about this with anybody, and even told me, like, because I was really open to the person who was talking to me, and I just found it, fascinating. At some point, it was just overwhelming, like how much, he wanted to push Jesus on, in the rhetoric. But you can see that this is just a natural tendency that people have once they have a mystical experience, and that's all they want to talk about. So again, that is the experience. I'm not saying that having the experience means that you're harvestable already. Like, hey, everybody, go on the line, get your psilocybin or your ayahuasca trip, and you got your ticket to heaven. That's not how it works, not to me. So I don't want that to be confused, with the harvestable nature of having and embodying this experience for the rest of your life and just seeing reality as it is. In any case, they keep saying the entity which reaches intelligent infinity most often will perceive this experience as one of unspeakable profundity. Like I said, however, it is not usual for the entity to immediately decide the cessation of the incarnation. Of course, now we can go to deeper levels on to say the people that actually got harvested 25,000 years ago, 150 people or so, they decided to come back because that's how much they wanted to serve. Because they say, and Ross says, rather the desire to communicate or use this experience to aid others is extremely strong. People who have woken up, like Eckhart Tolle, or just the Buddha itself, Gautama Siddhartha, they wanted to just express this and help other people to share this experience, to communicate to others what this is, even though it's impossible. But you want to make your best. For this you have to experience it yourself. So that is the experience. That's what people have. And again, not to be confused with the window, the opening of a window, with the psychedelic experience, which again, it may sound like I'm going against, the experience itself, but not to be confused with enlightenment or something to that effect. So anyhow, we'll move to the next question. And it's Don asking, thank you, would you define karma? Here we go. So Ross says, our understanding of karma is that which may be called inertia. Those actions which are put into motion will continue, using the ways of balancing, until such time as the controlling or higher principle, which you may liken unto your braking or stopping, is invoked. This stoppage of the inertia of action may be called forgiveness. These two concepts are inseparable. So let's get ready for this journey. Karma. All right. So we have karma as something. Karma means action. Your action. You're doing. Okay. Our cultural or pop culture understanding of karma is that whatever you do is going to come back to you. That is true. But that's not karma defined completely. I love that Ra says, because again, Ra has like a very scientific, I'll use the word, it's a poor word, but they're very academic, they're very sophisticated in the way they speak, and they use the word inertia. Inertia means the potential of movement that an object has, of course, whether it be at rest or in motion, and it remains with that potential. So karma is an action that creates an energy that will remain in motion until it is stopped. Or, like they say, those actions which are put into motion will continue. It's almost like, the classic rock in space that is just traveling at a certain speed. That's inertia. It has an inertia. Will continue using the ways of balancing until such time as the controlling or higher principle, which you may liken unto breaking or stopping, is invoked. That is forgiveness. Forgiveness is what stops the inertia of that action. Now, and you can see why, in pop culture, we have karma always as negative. You have so much karma, you're paying for your karma. That is all, perceived as negative. You have some negative stuff that you're paying off, or you're paying because, you're suffering and all this stuff. Sure, I'll get into the general perception that I see of this, and also, what it really is. Perception is key here. This is why forgiveness is the way we stop it. But let's see into the mechanics of karma. Again, they mention the word inertia. So you commit an action that will create an inertia, and that will continue to be, going until it stops. So the way they understand it, Ra said, is this way, is something that has been put in motion and will continue to be in motion until it's stopped. And the way it's stopped is forgiveness. So this creates the cyclical experiences. This is why when we get invested in third density, and speaking of wanderers, and when wanderers get invested in third density, then there is this possibility, this risk of getting karmically involved, because you will create actions that you will deny that you did, and the denial comes from saying, I am a victim, I am suffering this because you did it to me. And we fail to perceive that whatever we feel is something that we have created ourselves. Whatever we experience is that which we have created for ourselves. So the law of responsibility comes into play enormously here, because you have to take responsibility for everything that's happening in your life. Otherwise, you're maintaining the inertia of karma until you forgive it. And I'll get to that. So this karma is moving, right? And we'll get into the forgiveness in a little bit. But I want to say that we only perceive negative karma because that's the one that's destabilizing. That is the one that continues to go, right? And we see it as a cycle of lessons that we must face. And until we forgive them, which again we'll get to, it's going to keep coming. However, karma also works, and again, they're using the word karma as we understand it, but karma as an action that you produce is also positive. Because when you love others, and when you, and I'll just use the word love, when you do things to others, they'll come back to you. Only that we rarely perceive that which comes in, and we accept it. We say, oh, you know what, I receive it. Then we come full circle with the experience. So this is also karma. It's, putting out what you want to do. Of course, it can be done, the idea, like the intention of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to donate all this money so I can get it back. It doesn't work that way. It works, unconditionally. You just do it. You just do it because you just want it. I mean, it just happens. It happens, and that's how it is. And this opens a different door. And the door is that when you are doing it from the heart, which doesn't have an identity, again, you're opening the perception that there is no self, there is no me. There's only other selves and the one self, which I am a manifestation of. So when I produce actions that are creating this positive karma, which I'll call positive karma for lack of a better term, but we produce this inertia, we are not doing it to perceive it ourselves, because we already perceive the self as everything. So there is no need, and you have a detachment of what you do. This is another perception which really goes into the deepest portion of the self, where you just don't identify with anything. You do things because that's how you work. That's how you act. That's how you are. And so feeding the love, which is the only thing we have to give or take from energy in the negative path, but in the positive, all we're doing is radiating, and that radiation is being absorbed by others, which in essence is you. And since you already have this belief and understanding that everybody is you, then whatever you do to others, you're doing to yourself. You don't have to feel it, even though you may feel it. But there's such a difference, in terms of the, let's call it inertia of action, when it is negatively oriented or when it's positively oriented. And that's what we want to foster, that's what we want to create. That's how you create spiritual mass, in terms of densities of consciousness and how you contribute to the universe. You are a manifestation of the one self, and the one self only wants to love itself. So, it's a much more efficient way to spread the love, See how sophisticated I'm saying, the same hippie, message of, love everything. That's it. I mean, there's no other way. So, I think that's that. So, with all that in mind, forgiveness is a process of understanding, accepting, and then forgiving. Understanding is understanding that whatever, or knowing, not understanding, but knowing that anything that happened is, a result of other emotions that were at play at the moment. So you don't take, responsibility in the sense that you are the victim or you are, the culprit of whatever it is. You simply acknowledge that, it is what it is, So if it's something that you did, then you understand that you take no ownership of that. I know this sounds, contradictory because of our culture indoctrination, but you don't want to own that. I mean, it happened. It's fine. You learn from it. You experience it, and you act accordingly. In the future or at the present. The future never comes, but at present, you always have that present. It's a lesson. It's like when you start walking. When you learn how to walk, you're not remembering how you walked and you take ownership for all the steps you did. You just walk. And in the same way, you understand that. You understand that whatever happened, happened. And now, from the perspective of you performing an action, that's forgiveness. Of course, if you can do something to alleviate, the pain that you caused to somebody else, that's fine, but it all starts with the self. And then when somebody has hurt you or harmed you, I mean, we can go on for a while on this, because this is a very beautiful mechanic of, how to create forgiveness. But when that happens, you don't accept it as, something that you are the victim of. Rather, you can see it as you absorbing that anger, that frustration, whatever it was that it caused that, that harm that they did to you, and you don't own it either, because it's not meant for you. It was meant for anybody. You might have been the chosen one to receive this, And that's where the honor comes from, serving the self, serving others. I'll give you an example. I got somebody really upset with me because I wasn't wearing my mask, and God forbid you do something wrong in society. And, he was just full of anger, and he told me, to step away from him, 6 feet away from not wearing my mask or whatever. And, I did what he told me because I realized what was, his anger about. And, of course, the human me, during that day and consequent days, I thought about why do people have this anger? And my understanding came to that, they have been suppressed and repressed so much that they don't know what to do with this, so they just spill it over to other people. So instead of me arguing back or, whatever, just bouncing the ball that he threw at me, I just simply accepted it, and I said, it's fine, I'll take it, because I am not going to keep it to myself. I simply said, I understand it, fine, I don't harbor it. So that is the type of mechanics that you can do, and some are harder than others. But in any case, I'm going too far here, too long with this with karma. 25 minutes in, so so that is forgiveness. The stoppage of the inertia of action may be called forgiveness, because that's the process. But you first need to understand it fully, what happened, why that happened. Second, accept it as it is. You have no ownership, you have no responsibility. Things simply are, and you're just here to observe. And with that higher understanding, then you just forgive it, because there's actually it's not the forgiving that comes out of the mouth, but from the heart. So, all right, we can go to the next question, where Don says, if an entity develops what is called a karma in an incarnation, is there then programming that sometimes occurs so that he will experience catalysts that will enable him to get to a point of forgiveness, thereby alleviating the karma? Ross says, this is in general correct. However, both self and any involved other self may, at any time, through the process of understanding, acceptance, and forgiveness, ameliorate these patterns. This is true at any point in an incarnative pattern. Thus, one who has set in motion an action may forgive itself and never again make that error. This also breaks or stops what you call karma. So, there's a couple of things here that I already explained, or I talked about, and one more thing that I believe Ross says here that it's important to keep in mind. They say, well, first, Don's question was, if I create karma in my life that I wasn't supposed to, I hurt my grandma, I robbed someone, I did whatever, I created karma, negative karma, of course. This is what we're interested here. Would there be catalyst program or available for me to alleviate that? And now Ross says, this is in general correct, because if you don't address it, if you don't think about it, if you don't go through the process of, processing this, then catalyst will certainly come back, because that is inertia. Inertia will come back to you as a boomerang. And in this case, and when I mean inertia, I mean karma as inertia. It'll come back to you. But Ross says, however, meaning that you don't have to go through the process of experiencing or waiting for that catalyst. It's not like, oh my God, I did that, so I'm just gonna have to wait, for something to happen to me. Somebody's gonna rob me or whatever. It's a very simplistic way of seeing the cycle of karma. But then again, you don't have to wait for that, because both the self and any other person involved at any time through the process of understanding, acceptance, and forgiveness, which I explained already, can lessen basically these patterns. You see, here is the powerful thing, and I'll use another example of mine. Currently, as the day of recording this, I am going through the process of it's almost a year now, of forgiving somebody who, I want to use the word betrayed me and really backstabbed me in so many ways. Went from, being a dear friend, almost like a sister, to, you know, doing stuff that I consider to be, you know, really negative. And to be honest, you know, I would be lying if I say, you know, that I have completely forgiven the situation. And I'm going through that process still. And, you know, it's hard for me to understand. And because I cannot understand, I cannot accept it fully. So forgiveness hasn't come yet. But because of the perception of the things that happen, I could say that that karma was not, I mean, I paid for it, whatever it was, because I was the victim, the seemingly victim here. But that will create a karma for her. It seemed that way. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't understand it yet. But if I could create some forgiveness for that, which I'm really trying to, because I just know that it's affecting me. If I can forgive her, then that will cause an ameliorating or lessening of the patterns of karma that we were both involved with. And not only am I freeing myself, but I will free her from that. And you see, this is where, you know, the human mentality will come and say, well, I was the victim, you know, she should, you know, suffer for what she did because everything that she did was wrong. You know, she hurt me, she caused this pain, blah, blah, blah. You know, that is the human mentality. But if I were to just simply accept it and, you know, lessen those patterns, then I don't think she should suffer for that. Why should she? You know, if I can understand, and I do understand, that it had to do with the patterns of her racing and everything else that happened, then, you know, I can see that whatever she did was just a reflection of something that she's not, because her higher self is not represented in the actions that she committed. So my understanding goes beyond that. At least I try, and I see that she's not. She can be. You know, anybody who acts in a demeaning way or in a very negative and manipulative way, it's not being themselves. So I understand that, you know, and, you know, it remains to be seen how I still accept it and forgive it. But that's the process that I'm going to. But that mechanism is there. All right, so they say, this is true at any point in an incarnative pattern. Thus, one who has set in motion an action may forgive itself and never again make that error. This also breaks or stops what you call karma. That would have to be the person who created that karma or created that action. So even in my place where I feel like I didn't do anything and I was just, you know, the receiver of all of this, that's fine, because I would see, you know, that whatever I created to make that scenario possible, then I forgive that. I don't feel bad for giving her the comforts of my friendship and other means that were provided just, you know, as a brother, I felt, to give, you know, all this stuff. But, you know, I'm fine. You know, I understand that. It was a scenario that was placed for both to experience catalyst. I accept my catalyst. I forgive anything. And whatever she does, you know, it's really out of my hands. So I just hope the best for that. So this also breaks or stops what you call karma. And this probably works more if you feel like you're responsible for the actions that were committed. So, which you always have a place, but you can kind of rearrange this, you know, in a practical way, hopefully. So, all right. Don says next, thank you. Can you give me examples of catalytic action to produce learning under each of the following headings from the last session we had? Can you give me an example of the self-unmanifested producing learning catalyst? Okay, so before we get into this, Don in the last session asked a couple of questions about catalyst. The best catalyst that there exists is other selves, other people. Those are our mirrors, our reflections of ourselves. And so those are the best. But beyond that, there are others. And Don asked about those. Those are the unmanifested self, rumors of war, and others that I forgot already. Societal self, that sort of thing. So Don wants to ask now, you know, in terms of the unmanifested self, I believe, yes? So he says, can you give me an example of the self-unmanifested producing learning catalyst? So he wants an example of how this, again, not dealing with other selves, but the unmanifested self being the core self that we are, that which is beyond the self, the perceivable self, and it's resting in time-space, which is, what's producing everything that is now. So it's like the deepest portions of the mind. So Don asked this question, and Ra says, we observed your interest in the catalyst of pain. This experience is most common among your entities. The pain may be of the physical complex. More often, it is of the mental and emotional complex. In some few cases, the pain is spiritual in complex nature. This creates a potential for learning. The lessons to be learned vary. Almost always, these lessons include patience, tolerance, and the ability for the light touch. Okay, so again, Ra is answering in the terms of pain, because Ron, I keep saying Ron, it's a combination of Don and Ra. Now that Don is gone, it's not Ra or Don, it's Ron. Okay, so, yeah, I love being a child. So, so Ra says, there is catalyst of pain, because Don was asking about pain as if it in the last session he asked, if I remember correctly, if pain fell under the category of unmanifested self, and Ra says yes. So Ra's going to answer in terms of pain. So they say pain may be physical, right, the body, or mental and emotional, the mind, and in few cases the pain is spiritual. Now, pain as physical, we know it. Don't we know it? Emotional and mental, of course, we know it as well. And in spiritual, I don't think I grasp fully what this may be. I can only relate it to the pain that a lot of wanderers feel for not feeling part of the planet, yet they feel kind of like this is the thing, they don't feel part of society, but they feel part of the planet. So there is a conflict there. That's spiritual pain to me, because they know internally that there's something else, but they can't find it. They're still confused. They're going through this process. So spiritual pain may be this way. That's just my speculation. This creates a potential for learning, of course, whether it be physical, mostly mental and emotional, which is what we're experiencing all the time. The lessons to be learned vary, but they always produce patience, tolerance, and the ability for the light touch. That is the purpose of the lessons. Like, the lessons were supposed to produce that. Yeah, so when we have, say, physical pain, the way I understand it, is emotional pain that, disregarding, of course, physical trauma, which is, an accident, you break your bone or, cut yourself. And even that could be a manifestation of some emotional stuff that's been going on. But let's just make an invisible line here to separate the physical trauma to the emotional. The emotional, when it's not processed, and this is where illness and disease comes from, when it kind of creates this possibility of having, illness, like cancer, for example, is an exacerbation of not being able to understand your emotions, especially anger, and other discrepancies with the harmony that you are. So it's a very emotional to physical type of manifestation. So physical manifestation, in this case of pain, it becomes it's coming from the mind. The mind creates the body, but mostly what we are experiencing is emotional and mental pain, which is, we're familiar with it. Us, how we feel with ourselves and with the external world, and who we are and what we are, and so on and so forth. So this creates potential for learning. Always, that emotional pain is always there to teach you something. It's always there to show something about you, and only you can discover that. So that's what they're saying here. Let's move on to the next part of the answer. Ra says, very often the catalyst for emotional pain, whether it be the death of the physical complex of one other self, which is loved, or some other seeming loss, will simply result in the opposite, in a bitterness and impatience and souring. This is catalyst which has gone awry. In these cases, then, there will be additional catalysts provided to offer the unmanifested self further opportunities for discovering the self as all-sufficient creator containing all that there is and full of joy. All right, so very raw way to say that very often emotional pain, whether it be the death of a loved one or some other seeming loss. I love how they say seeming loss because nothing is lost. If we could grasp this concept and understanding and live it and embody it, we would be free from so much pain, knowing that there is no loss of anything. Everything is working in unity. Everything is working in unison, actually, as a symphony. There is no loss. Everything is presenting. When the drums or the percussion stops, it's because it's allowing other parts of the orchestra to keep playing. The music continues, and you're just playing your part here. Everybody's playing their part. They come back again, and it creates it's an ongoing, eternal music that is going on. We all play our parts. So the death of a loved one and any other seeming loss could be anything, like say my friend, lost a friend. And to be fair, talking about it, because I can't stop thinking about it, my pain comes from losing a friend. That is a trauma that I have. That it comes from self-worth. I know that. And losing a friend to me causes me pain. It used to cause me even more pain because I felt like without friends, I am nobody. So even up to last year, I was very susceptible to this. So I see how this is teaching me something. You see, that is a loss. It's a seeming loss. I didn't lose her. She's still there. She's still for me in the sense of, what she was. We may not talk anymore, now in the physical, but she's not lost to me. Her higher self is still there. We planned this together. So in any case, without going too esoteric on this, the seeming loss here is something that we perceive to be lost. Physical death is, one that, again, it seems very real, but it's not. So this results in bitterness, impatience, and souring. And this is catalyst because it's catalyst to us that has gone awry, meaning that has gone, the wrong way or unrelated to the direction that it was supposed to be. So, in these cases, there will be additional catalysts provided to offer the unmanifested self further opportunities for discovering the self. So, the unmanifested self is that which wants to manifest, okay? That which wants to, say, I have this fear, of losing friends. And my unmanifested self is saying, listen, your perception of friends is not true. It's false. Friends is something that you have to realize in a better concept of reality for you. So if that's what my unmanifested self wants to show me, it will provide me the catalyst for me to realize that. So that's what they're talking about, that, when it goes awry, then, other opportunities will be, offered to discover the self as all-sufficient creator, containing all that there is and full of joy. Meaning that in my example, I don't need friends to be. I am, and thus I have friends, but if I don't, I still am. And that is the key thing. You are always, I love how they say it here, discovering the self, me, in my case, as all-sufficient creator, containing all that there is and full of joy. I don't need anything to be joyful. I don't need anything that will make me complete. The seeking of that is the unrecognition that I am everything. So much we can get into this, but we have more to cover. We're getting close. I want to cover at least 2-3 more questions here. So Don says, do what we call contagious diseases play any part in this process with respect to the unmanifested self? It's a really good question right now. And Ra says, these so-called contagious diseases are those entities of second density which offer an opportunity for this type of catalyst. If this catalyst is unneeded, then these second density creatures, as you would call them, do not have an effect. In each of these generalizations, you may please note that there are anomalies, so that we cannot speak to every circumstance, but only to the general run or way of things as you experience them. So we're talking about contagious disease, and oh gods, if there was a time in humanity where this question was more relevant in terms of what higher density beings think about or know about this, it would be now. Probably last year a lot more, but with all the chaos, who knows? So does these contagious disease play a part? I believe that's what Don asked. With respect to the unmanifested self, if the contagious disease, and they do play a role. I mean, disease, again, it has been explained by other entities in the Confederation that it offers an opportunity for growth, for understanding the self, and for ameliorating some of the patterns that have been created already too. They are a type of catalyst for sure. So if the catalyst is not needed, then it won't be manifested. I mean, if you, this is the reason why, I mean, so much we can go into conspiracy theories and controversial topics here in terms of, contagious disease, because now we know what's been going on, and there's extreme views on this. The point is that whatever disease is out there, if you are receptive for that catalyst, you will get it. Whatever disease it's going on the planet, how it originates, it's not related to this. It's just how the person reacts to this. This is why a person who is, I don't want to say spiritual, but somebody who is just harmonious with itself, lives, a pleasant life, doesn't have any problems or emotional problems, then they tend to have a pretty healthy life. Whereas, the other extreme is very, ill and all this stuff. So our pursuit for health or for, just a healthy lifestyle probably is secondary, to the way you feel and act in reality, people who are surrounded by quartz and crystals, and they eat a vegan diet, and they chant, and they do meditation and yoga practice, and I mean, you can throw in all that stuff in there, and people do it, and they become this active, healthy lifestyle people, but internally they're full of emotional pain and problems and rejections and hatred and all this stuff. And they may even pretend that they are not. These people are going to be very susceptible to disease. I mean, they are creating either the disease themselves, as we know. Viruses are activated in the body. They're not contagious in themselves. They are activated. We're full of viruses, and they get activated as a part of our immune system. So if you create the environment for it, and obviously you have the virus, then it will be activated. That's just how it works. It's not a contagious thing in terms of, I will get it from you because you have it. No, it doesn't happen that way. It has been proven for probably over 100 years, when I think it was the Spanish flu, where they tried to literally inject people with the virus, the contagion, not even the virus, but just like mucus and all this stuff. I mean, they were pretty nasty back then. They did it with horses and all this kind of stuff, and they didn't get infected because their vibrational state was different than the other animal or the other person. So this is just to say that your internal environment is your best defense to anything. We can see now how the Orion group, through the elite here, has caused this lower vibrational state of fear and anxiety, so people actually are susceptible to disease. That is just how it works. I mean, I'm not calling on any conspiracy theories, but I'm just talking about, the way how the Orion group works. That's just what we know. Negativity works that way. It wants to create a fertile environment for people to be in a depressed state. So again, I love that Ra also says they cover all their bases, and they say in each of these generalizations you may please note that there are anomalies. There are anomalies, so that we cannot speak to every circumstance, but only to the general run or way of things, which can be, truthfully, what we know in Europe back in the medieval times, where we had these huge cities and we just had really poor hygiene. I mean, that's just unacceptable for a civilized society where they were, crapping and, throwing putrefied remains of animals into the same source of water they were drinking. I mean, yeah, that will brew the seas beyond catalyst. I mean, that's just you calling for these. I mean, you're brewing the disease there, so they have to live somewhere, right? They're gonna live in you. So, to me, that those are anomalies, as well as others, how people get infected into some rare disease. How do you get that? It seems contagious, but not everybody gets it. Why is that happening? We don't know. So, anomalies on the side. Contagious diseases are there for the people who are susceptible for it, and you are susceptible if you obviously have a fertile environment energetically for it to live in. So, health starts from inside, not from outside. Oh my God, what did I just say? Do it or don't do it. All right, take it or don't take it. Next question. Don says, what part do what we call birth defects play in this process? Ra says, this is a portion of the programming of the mind-body complex totality manifested in the mind-body-spirit of third density. These defects are planned as limitations which are part of the experience intended by the entity totality complex. This includes genetic predispositions, as you may call them. So, very quick here, very simple. What was it that Don called it? I don't want to use a wrong term here. Birth defects, which are congenital, of course, genetic predispositions. This is all, again, part of the programming of, just like we have discussed that certain disease, like say, I don't know, I call asthma. I suffer from asthma, not, in an emotional reactive way, thankfully, but in a viral way. Whenever I get sick with a cold, since I was a baby, literally, I would have this, constriction of my respiratory ways. And over time, as, I grew, that just kind of went away, but it's still there, That is a portion of my my programming. I've come to accept that. So that is a congenital to me, of course. These defects are planned as limitations, which are part of the experience intended by the entity totality complex. So when you see yourself, not from the little me, poor little me, but from the higher me that planned this incarnation, and it's just a brief experience, then you see that, whatever you have is what you have, and that's fine. I planned this, so I must surely know up there or down there or inside, whichever way you want to see it, I must know what I'm doing. So I trust that. I accept my asthma. That's it. It's there. My lower back pain, just something that I'm sure it was catalyst for something else, but we need not get to that. So, all these defects, we're talking about birth disease or birth defects, actually. So that is a portion of the programming. It's there, this is why I tell everybody who, and, it's some of them are hard, some of them are hard to accept. I used to train, when I say train, it's like powerlifting training, somebody with cerebral palsy. And she was a lovely lady, and she was accepting of her disease, but sometimes you would see that there was some weakness into, I wish I was, but it's hard to accept. But in the end, if that's what you have, that's what you have, and sure enough, she was very spiritual as well, so that helped a lot. Probably the best client I had for powerlifting. She was such a anyhow. So yeah, all these diseases are genetical, and they're just there. As long as you have a perception that goes beyond this physical, limited body, then you'll have, a better perception of yourself. All right, I want to get at least into this one before we close this video for today. Don says, thank you. Would you give me the same type of information about the self in relation to the societal self? This is another question that comes from session 33. So, catalyst from the self in relation to societal self. Ross says, the unmanifested self may find its lessons those which develop any of the energy influx centers of the mind-body-spirit complex. The societal and self interactions most often concentrate upon the second and third energy centers. Thus, those most active in attempting to remake or alter the society are those working from feelings of being correct personally, or of having answers which will put power in a more correct configuration. This may be seen to be a full travel from negative to positive in orientation. Either will activate these energy ray centers. Let's make a pause here and refresh that in the last session, again, we talked about the unmanifested self, that's catalyst, that's there, and then there is the relation of self with the societal self, meaning this self that has recognized, self-aware of itself, and then how do I belong to society? So how does the catalyst present there? And Ra says, the unmanifested self, again, the one that wants to show here, finds its lessons, catalyst, in those which develop in any of the energy influx centers of the mind-body-spirit complex, meaning that you will find those lessons, the unmanifested self, may find its lessons which develop in energy influx centers. So in any chakra of your body, you may experience this, okay? It's not limited to just one. The societal and self interactions most often concentrate upon the second and third energy centers. So the relation of self to the society, to the culture, to the tribe, to your sense of belonging in the group, other selves, are mostly with the second and third energy centers. So orange ray energy center and yellow ray energy center. So those most active in attempting to remake or alter the society are those working from feelings of being correct personally. So those who are working, again, how you feel in society, can create catalyst for every other energy center. Because once you are at that point, you are self-aware. This is why it's key. The work that we're doing here in third density is key, because you can actually create catalyst by having the self-awareness for all other energy centers. And it's worked within the societal self because other people, right? They're here. I don't want to go so deep into this, but I want you to reflect on the fact that in third density, catalyst, and speaking of catalyst, this is something that Ra says in other sessions, is 100 times more powerful, for lack of a better term, more intense, I think it's the word that they use, 100 times more intense than in any other density, which means that the catalyst provided here in society, culture, other people, groups, tribe, whatever, it's a lot more potent for us than in other density. So we can use this for any other part of our energy centers, love, wisdom, unity, sacredness of everything. You can see this here. It's so powerful. So again, that's what they're saying then. And then they say, the societal and self interactions most often concentrate upon the second and third energy centers, meaning, those two energy centers that are related to myself as identity and myself as part of a group. And they say those most active in attempting to remake or alter the society are those working from feelings of being correct personally. So those who feel that they are correct because, their, their perceptions of life and how they think, they feel that they're correct. The type of people that I'm talking about. I mean, I have been there, so I know what that feels. Obviously, I've worked most of my life from trying to feel correct personally. I'm just opening now, for those who don't know. I'm recent here, so I haven't been doing this for too long. And they say, or of having answers which will put power in a more correct configuration, which means, political, obviously. How you rearrange, society and what's best and whatnot. I mean, we're talking about political, not with the Orion group's influence, even though it may be. And that's why they say this may be seen to be a full travel from negative to positive in orientation. Either will activate these energy ray centers, because these are the orange and yellow ray energy centers. That is, how we activate them in relation to other selves, how we put power in configuration. Now they're going to say something else, and then I'll put an end to this first part, where they say there are few whose desires to aid society are of a green ray nature or above. These entities, however, are few due to the understanding, may we say, a fourth ray that universal love freely given is more to be desired than principalities, or even the rearrangement of peoples or political structures. So beautiful. Now there are some whose desire, which is hard, green ray nature, they have desires to a society not in correcting the power or people and rearranging them and all this stuff. This third density mentality that we can create the perfect society, the utopia that we never achieve. That is because third density is not meant for that. Third density is to decide what to do. I mean, it is a way, and that is, a way of service for sure. The Egyptians did it terribly. We are doing terribly now too. But that's because of Orion. Yeah, let's blame them. Let's put the blame on them. So in any case, these entities, I'm talking about green ray now, people who are loving, they're more into the understanding that fourth ray is universal love, freely given. It's more desired than principalities. So we are not too concerned with creating the perfect society. Like, we don't think we should create, the blueprint for everybody to live. Rather, that the foundation of it is, love. Whatever you want to do with your group, your tribe, your society, your civilization, your new world order, doesn't matter as long as it's loving. If it's loving, then who cares? It's fine. That is what we're really, all about here on planet Earth, at least in third density. So we're more than that, than principalities or even the rearrangement of peoples and political structures. So we know that rearranging the pieces is not going to cause anything different than what it is, but rather, that the pieces work harmoniously together. And, that's, no matter how you put it together, as long as it's harmonious, that's fine. That's just all we're looking for. So those are the catalysts that are provided here, say in the scheme that we have in third density. That is the catalyst that is available, because we're trying to live with each other, basically. How do we live with each other? That's the question, in essence, And that is the catalyst. Catalyst is provided by how we think we should live. And, there are those who think very orange and yellow ray, very sensitive to Orion group influence and negative path. And there are those who think in green and blue, or even indigo, of rearranging society. If we could rearrange society, at least in the green, we would be so much more harmonious, like much less chaos, of course, and all this conflicts. We would transcend. I'm not going to say better. It's going to higher consciousness, of course. Blue and indigo would be the utopia. But that is, beyond that, this is the terrain that we have, the landscape in which we have catalysts for those. So with that, we're going to leave it at this. We have some of the questions that we're going to cover. It has to do with catalyst and how it's provided here. We're going to talk about other people like Martin Luther King, and I forget, Albert Schweitzer. I always butcher his name. But so we're going to get into that in the next video. So conclusions. We talked about karma, and we talk about catalyst again. So how I want to wrap this up is to remember that karma is mostly seen in the negative, because of the things that are happening to us are just, reflective of what we have done in the past. It could be from other incarnations, and that's why we shouldn't even really care about what we did in other incarnations because it's happening here. We don't imagine if we would know everything we did in other incarnations, then we have this anxiety, you know, of if it's gonna happen to me, how is it gonna happen? Now I gotta feel it, you know, it's gonna happen. No need. And you know, in some cases, regressions may be helpful. I don't believe it's necessary for sure. So all you need to do is pay attention to the present moment. What's the present moment giving you? You know, how can you react to that in a loving way? How can you forgive anything that you feel that is, you know, I don't know, say somebody just, I don't know, their dog craps on my lawn. Do I care? Do I even need to forgive them? I don't care. I just see like some sort of, you know, fertilizer for my lawn. Not that I care much about my lawn anyway, so you know, to me that's not much. But if somebody comes, you know, here and insults me and I don't know, comes here and beats my son for some reason, I mean, then I have strong catalysts to work with. You know, how do I forgive this person? What is it teaching me? You know, so it's always to work with what you have here, without getting too involved in karma. Karma can create a lot of anxiety, you know, for people, because once they get in the known of this, they say, "Oh my God, how much do I have to pay for this life?" You don't know, and it's better not to know. What you have to kind of nourish is that mentality, that consciousness that sees everything as one, everything as love, and everything that is being presented here as an illusion of what really is. And all you need to do is absorb it with, you know, your heart. I know it sounds simple, but that's just how it's supposed to be. And that's it. You know, catalysts will come, you know, for you to either manifest yourself as you are, manifest more of yourself as you are, or, you know, provide that opportunity for you to alleviate karma. So that's the way, you know, we should be going about our life, I believe. If our path is to feel liberation, remember, liberation from karma altogether, and feeling that you obviously don't have, and this is probably the best perception that I can give you for this, is that when you realize that you have no self, anatman, as they say in Hinduism, there is no such thing as me, okay? There is only consciousness, and I am a simple, singular observer of consciousness here, then you don't associate with anything. Karma is completely banished from your perception, because nothing that happens is happening to you, is happening around you, you know, and you don't even consider your body part of, you know, you, because you are everything. So you're seeing the creation as a whole. And, you know, if you can, again, foster this type of a mentality, then you would be equipped with a better understanding of reality that allows you to not even process karma, but just you don't even have to actively forgive it, anything. You just accept it as, okay, you know, just happened, it's just something that happened, you know, I don't need to get involved, there's no me to be involved with. So, you know, it's just, it helps a lot, you know, to have this notion of reality. We're not there yet, you may not be, or maybe we are, who knows, depends on you, but it really gets to that point. So that's the highest point of perception that we can have. That is what we should seek in meditation, or we are trying to seek, actually. Meditation is that, you know, is the solution of the concepts and ideas that we have of ourselves, that's creating the mind and the eternal reflection of the ego. So that's all I got for the first part of session 34. In the next part, again, we're just going to finish session 34. We're going to talk more about catalysts, I believe, and these characters of history. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I hope this was helpful and was helpful in a way for understanding karma and catalysts and programming and the self and everything else. So again, thank you so much. I'll see you in session 34, part 2.